Welcome in, everybody, to Extreme Radio, presented by GracePointe Healthcare. Go to GracePointeHealthcare.com, request your appointment online. If you mention you're with 8-Man Extreme, you get $20 off your new patient office visit fee. GracePointe Healthcare, modern medicine the old-fashioned way. And today's show is sponsored by Dr. Sterling Foster. For all your digestive issues and chiropractic needs, go to drsterlingfoster.com. Spencer Tomset running the show alone today. James and Isaiah have some family issues they have to take care of, but they'll be on the show next week, so best of wishes to them as they try to get those sorted out. We're open next week. We're hoping to get a special guest in that'll help us preview the season even more than we already have from last week. But this week I got in studio first in-studio guest we've had for the preseason, I'm pretty sure. But Mr. Dustin McGhee, the head coach for the newest 8-man football team in the conference, the Ezell-Harding Christian School Eagles. Coach, thank you for coming into the show, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's really good to see another school coming in, especially to fill that slot for the Webb School. Did you guys ever play the Webb School at any point during your during either school's history or anything like that?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. Yeah, they're moving up to 11 right now. The guarantee for them is at least 2 years, but with them losing in the MTAC championship last year by a blowout, the question looms on if they're going to make the move back to 8-man football sooner than later, but they have 2 years minimum, of course. But we're here to talk about the Eagles, of course, not the Webb School. So let's get started. For those who don't know much about Dustin McGhee, let's hear a little bit about your background, what your football career was like, any MVP trophies you may have gotten during football and such. But let's hear about your football career, how you got into coaching, and what eventually led you to this point to be at the helm of the Eagles football program.
Yeah, so I grew up in Newport, Arkansas. It's about 2 hours west of Memphis, I guess. In the Delta of Arkansas. Very average football player. I will never, ever claim to be the best football player to
Don't be so humble.
No, I am not being humble. I was a much better baseball player than anything. Went to Harding University there in Arkansas. Played a year of baseball. That was about the highlight of my athletic career. Knew that coaching was where I wanted to go. So I got my degree in kinesiology. Got my teaching certificate for Arkansas. First job was in a small town in southeast Arkansas called Horizon. Very well-known football school down there. I was hired as a head baseball coach, actually, and an assistant football coach. Thought that baseball was my path that I wanted to take, and I was there for 3 years and got married to a beautiful woman from Portland, Maine, and she was not too fond of the small town Arkansas lifestyle. So after we got married, we decided we wanted to see the world a little bit. So we took a job in Mill City, Oregon. Was offered the head football coaching job up there. Made the trek, about 36-hour drive. Lived there for 3 years. Went to one state championship game there. And then after that state championship game, we decided that we were ready to start a family and wanted to get back closer to home. So Ezell-Harding kind of just came upon us. Felt like something that God was leading us to, and it all worked out for the better. So I've been at Ezell since March of 2018, I guess. Mm-hmm. Last year was my first full season there. I really enjoyed it. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to be. A lot of amazing people. I love it.
So you were a varsity baseball coach to start off. So which baseball team are you ashamedly a fan of for major leagues?
I am a diehard Atlanta Braves fan.
That's perfect place to be because that's the only games you get around here. My brother is ashamedly a Nationals fan at the moment. With was it Scherzer just got put on the injury reserve today, so shame for him and such. But hopefully the Braves will do something good in the division this year.
I'm looking for it.
So you said Ezell-Harding just kind of fell in place for you, right?
Yeah. So my wife is from the city in Maine. She kind of liked that bigger city lifestyle. I've always been a small town guy.
Mm-hmm.
I love being at small schools. I feel like you can have such a greater impact with just a smaller group of kids that you're around. So when we were applying for jobs, we found Ezell in Nashville, and it was a small town feel in a big city atmosphere, and I mean it was really the first place that I applied, and it worked out for the best.
Yeah, that's one of the main messages I hear from a lot of coaches around not just this league, but any of the smaller schools that you see around sports in general, is that the community is a big drive for them to come in, especially. And obviously, with you guys joining in, we haven't had the chance to fully experience that. But I'm sure when we'll be down there to Ezell's field, we'll definitely experience a lot more of the community and such. But that's just one of the big things I've heard, especially from coaches, is that the community and the more that they can invest into the kids is more important. Because at public school, you can invest in some of the players, but at the end of the day, with public schools, it's more a focus. It's more an emphasis on winning and being successful in your programs. But with a place like Ezell or some other schools around things such as Riverside Christian, any of the schools in MTAC specifically, it's more focused on the community and enriching the lives of the student athletes more so than that. It's that, obviously the goal is winning. That's part of it, but it's more important on the community to get to that goal.
Yeah, and I've always been a public school guy. This is my very first experience in a private school setting. And, it's different. And I do think some of what you're saying is right, but it's just the fact that you can build relationships deeper and a lot easier the smaller community you're in. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I know a lot of guys, are always looking for the bigger, better school, the most, I guess, profile you can put on it. But
right.
I just love that idea of, we've got 20 guys. I'm going to invest everything I've got in those 20 guys and hopefully impact their lives for the better. And I just don't get any better than that.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't get any better for sure. So you started out last year as the head coach for Ezell, first full season on the coaching staff when you guys were in your final year of 11-man through the long stint they had. Your athletic director was on WSMV recently and talked about the conversion process over from 11 to 8-man and such. But just for those who didn't have the chance to catch that interview and such, what went into the decision to go from 11-man to 8-man after being in 11-man football for so long, and kind of go over some of the maybe some of the difficulties, the ease of process to convert those things over, like just kind of the process and such that went through it?
Yeah, so we have been we've been a small school for a while. We've probably been one of the smaller of the private schools in Division II at the TSSAA level for quite a few years. We co-opt with a school called Knowledge Academy on Bell Road.
Mm-hmm.
They made up about half of our team. So last year we had about 15 to 16 guys from Ezell alone that actually played football. So when we made it to the playoffs last year, we kind of got in this situation where we had some injuries. Some guys from the other school got into some academic trouble. We were left with 17 guys to play an 11-man game against a much larger private school on the other side of town. And I think that game just kind of opened our eyes to something different needed to happen for the safety of our guys. So I kind of brought it up as an idea to our athletic director. I think the first time anybody hears the words 8-man football, it kind of throws them back because we're not used to it around here.
Of course.
I got exposed to it in Oregon quite a bit because the smallest level of schools in Oregon, there's about 60 of them, actually play 8-man football. It's a sanctioned sport. All of the western states are doing that.
Yep.
So I had been used to it. I had seen it. It wasn't a shock to me. So when I brought it up, it took him a day or two to kind of understand what I was talking about. But I think that playoff game kind of opened our eyes to say, hey, we need to do something different for the experience of our student athletes, for the safety of our student athletes, and just give them a much better football experience at our school. So we talked about it. We prayed about it. We met with our president, Dr. Judd, Dr. Charlton, myself, and we kind of came to that conclusion that this was the best thing for us. And then from there, it was all about, spreading the word to our families, making sure that everybody was on board with us. And it's been a great transition since then.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people we've had to explain the 8-man football concept to that's outside of the MTAC community, because it's big in Texas. Like you said, it's big out in the West, especially in Texas. They have a huge 8-man football following over there. They've got a lot of private schools. I actually didn't know about Oregon, where they have 60 teams out there doing 8-man football. I'm sure you've heard about Van Der Esch, Dallas Cowboys,
absolutely.
8-man football guy, walk on for I think it was Idaho State, something like that. But that's just an example of how 8-man football, it's not a sport that is like our main slogan, at least going into this year, 8=11. In terms of the competitiveness of the sport, the intensity of the game, it's the same. The only difference is that you're dropping 2 linemen and a wide out. And that concept is just kind of hard to explain to some people.
Right.
And we've certainly through our media exposure, we've done at least all we can do to make sure that people understand it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just people watching a game and then seeing how it plays out.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, and there's always going to be negative perceptions on anything that's different from what you're used to. And I think that's kind of the first battle you have to face. I knew right away that 8-man football was the exact same game as 11-man football, just 3 less people. That's literally the only difference, right?
Yeah.
But trying to explain that to somebody who's never seen it or experienced it, it takes a little while.
Yeah.
So we're excited to put that product on the field. Our kids are excited about it. We've talked to them extensively about the differences and really lack thereof differences, and just explain to them that, hey, this is still the same amazing football game that we all hold dear to our hearts,
And you did a little bit of that during the spring game too.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the spring game and how that how the parents reacted, how the players felt after that.
Yeah, I think I think it went really well. So what we do is we just take the guys that we have through spring practice, and we split them in 2 different teams and kind of do a red-white scrimmage. I better say crimson-white scrimmage.
Yeah.
I get in trouble if I don't.
No one knows.
But yeah, it went really well. I think the kids enjoy the style of offense that we're putting on the field. It's a little bit different than what we did in 11-man. I am a traditional split back veer option coach. It's a little bit faster style of offense in 8-man. And they really enjoyed it. Our fans were great. We had a huge turnout at the spring game. I've heard nothing but positive remarks from parents and supporters of the school. So it's been really good, man.
Now, you've heard positive things, of course, from the parents and players and such. Have any of the coaches that you worked with in 11-man through TSSAA and such, have any of them said anything specific to you about your decision to switch? Have any of the coaches kind of given you feedback of, oh, this isn't a good idea, or maybe you should just stay with 11-man? Have any of the coaches said anything?
Yeah, other than jokingly,
Right.
not really. We have heard from a couple of different schools about how they think it's a good idea. Just understanding where we're at from an enrollment standpoint, the number of athletes we have on campus. I think everybody completely understands where we're at, why we did it, and I think most of the coaches, there's always going to be guys that are a little frustrated that you're dropping out of their conference and
Right.
Schedule changes, but other than that, they were very supportive. The guys that I talked to, at least.
Mm-hmm. Are there any rivalries you guys aren't going to be able to renew this coming season?
I've only been there for a year. From what I understand, DCA was kind of a big rivalry, so we'll lose that one. But the great thing about it is we've still got baseball, basketball, all the other sports
are sports in there.
are still TSSAA, so those rivalries will continue.
Oh yeah, they just won't be on the football field per se. Maybe, you guys use the same field for soccer with football?
We do, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it'll be in the
same
soccer
grass,
form on
yeah.
there, the same grass, just not on the football turf as they refer to it. So the coaches have only said things jokingly to you from TSSAA, but let's shift towards the MTAC a little bit. So I think you mentioned that from the playoff game, either you guys were in. I know that you had the chance to watch some film from 8-Man from our broadcast and such. Was it through us that you discovered MTAC, or were there other ways you discovered MTAC specifically?
So when I first got here last year, we were trying to revive our middle school program. We had not had it for a year or two, I believe. And we only had about 12 or 13 kids that were interested in playing. And so I just started doing some research about, 8-man opportunities in Tennessee is where I came across the MTAC. So we actually started playing. I guess it's not a sanctioned MTAC sport with middle school football, but we played MTAC schools in our middle school schedule. So that was our first exposure to that. If you just Google 8-Man in Tennessee, you're going to notice two things:
right,
MTAC and 8-Man Extreme. So obviously, watched a little of your film, listened to some radio shows, stuff like that, and it just made us more comfortable with the switch.
Were there any specific coaches you reached out to and talked to in the conference that kind of helped you guys feel more comfortable with the transition?
Not really. Jason, our athletic director, might could tell you something different. I personally felt very comfortable with it from the get-go. I think what made us most comfortable is when we were knocked out of the playoffs in 11-man, I think the next week we came and watched the state championship game for the MTAC, and we just wanted to see what the atmosphere was like and just kind of get a feel for it. And I think watching that game and the way that it was ran, we felt very comfortable with, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, at least in Christian community, the atmosphere there for the championship was fantastic.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the fan base, you could tell the fan base doesn't care about if you have 3 extra men on both sides of the field or not. They just care about seeing their kids play, and especially in the championship when you've got a trophy on the line, it was huge for them. It was an incredible atmosphere for this last year's championship. And speaking of championship and playoffs, I'm sure you probably heard of it already, but the league is now doing a 6-team playoff. How does what is your take kind of on that? Because I haven't looked too much at the TSSAA's playoff structure, but at least in the past, how MTAC has been, it's just the number 1 and 2 seeds from each division. They just hosted semifinals, and whoever won the championship. The losers played a consolation 3rd, 4th place game, and the number 3 seeds from both divisions just did an MTAC bowl game because it was one more game for their seniors such. But now that the bowl game is gone and the consolation game is gone, there's a 6-team playoff that gives every chance 1, 2, and 3 seeds from each division the chance to go for a championship. How does obviously, of course, every coach has number 1 goal. There is championship on the mind, number 1 seed on mind going into the season. But how does a 6-team playoff sound to you going into your first year of 8-man football?
Yeah. So when I came into it, we knew that it was kind of the championship style and the consolation 3rd, 4th, whatever you want to call it, whatever y'all called that. I think from a legitimacy standpoint, 16 playoff makes it a lot nicer. I will say that in TSSAA Division II Single A, I think everybody made the playoffs if you were not last, if I'm remembering it right. So, your playoff system gets a little diluted. You've got some teams that probably are not deserving of the playoffs that are making, at least you're having a chance to play. I love the idea that, the top 6 teams, top 50%, top half of the league are going to make the playoffs and have an opportunity to play. I mean, that's sports, I think anytime that you can have parity in your league, anytime that you can do things to make it worthwhile for people to come to, it's always a great thing. And, I love the idea that the top seed gets a bye week. It's an incentive to win your division.
Yep.
But I also love the idea that if you're 3rd, you still have just as good of an opportunity to win championships as anybody else. So
yeah,
I think it's great. I think it was a great idea for them to go to that.
Yeah, and they're also doing in place of the consolation game before the championship, as far as we've heard, the league is doing their own league-run AllStar game. And I know the TSSAA, they've done their own AllStar games in each of their respective sports, and they've done that kind of stuff. But that's kind of what we've done with the Extreme All-Star Game is that we, because the conference at that point, they did not have an All-Star Game up to this point where they announced they're planning on having their own league run one. But that was kind of our model of giving the players who performed at the top of their game, whether they're on a championship team or not, the opportunity to play one last game as seniors or juniors such. Not only that, but potentially form great relationships with players from across the league and such. So I'm sure especially you guys are looking forward to just a continued opportunity to recognize excellence, but also get a chance to meet other players and coaches from the league.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think it's cool that y'all set that up and have a hand in that, and I think it's cool that the league is trying to find ways to make stuff like that happen as well.
Yeah, hopefully we're definitely looking to see how the All-Star Game goes for the league going forward. But ready to see some Ezell players get on the Extreme All-Star Game field. It's going to be great out in Dayton. So this one is specifically from James. As I said, he couldn't make it to the show, but this one is one of those. Maybe one of those you could instantly answer, or you have to think a little bit more about it. But which is as a coach in the TSSAA, especially, regardless of what your division, there's always going to be those top teams every year, depending on what seniors and juniors they have. There's going to be those teams that are just unstoppable. Some are middle of the pack and really lower teams. So, which as a coach would you rather have? Would you rather have would you rather have an ESPN highlight moment against a team that just has a lackluster or terrible defense, or would you rather get a 1st and 10 against a team that has arguably one of the best defenses in the league? Which would you rather have, the ESPN highlight moments against a lesser team, or a success of a first down against a stellar defense?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I personally would rather perform at a high level against a better defense. I mean, highlights are great, but I think when you can have success against the best of the best, that's kind of what you're going for. That's what good teams do. So I personally would say that. No, you ask one of my kids, they want to be on SportsCenter. So.
Yeah, they'd either be ESPN SportsCenter, CBS Sports. They'd rather get the highlights up there for sure. You mentioned a little bit about your baseball background, of course, Atlanta Braves fan and such. So how long have you lived in Tennessee for? Is it about a few years now?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. Okay. Which do you prefer watching, NFL football or college football?
College football.
By far?
Easy.
So I know you're mentioning that. So which college team?
I'm a Razorback fan, unfortunately.
that would explain that would explain, of course, the Arkansas background, of course. Arizona and such. Ashamedly Razorbacks fan, right?
I try not to be ashamed of them, but
it's the same with me. I say I'm ashamedly a Titans fan just because of the average play that they've had. Pretty soon, once I go to UTK, I'll be ashamedly a Volunteers fan at this point.
Right.
But it's one of those things that no one will be more ashamedly a fan of someone than Cleveland sports for the most part. But yeah, Razorbacks. You think they're on the rise?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Let's just go.
Well,
with that.
I thought they were on the rise 3 or 4 years ago, and it didn't turn out too well. But I think I love the state of Arkansas. I love the Hogs. I think Coach Morris is doing things right, and hopefully it works out.
Is it true that in certain parts of Arkansas, because the Tyson Factory is there, that it smells like processed chicken? Is that a truth?
No.
No, of course. Okay,
Not true.
that's good. That's a good thing. That's a good thing because I've heard that from some people who've driven through Arkansas. They've said if you drive past the city where the Tyson plant is, that's all they smell. So that's a good thing. We have someone who's lived, confirmed Extreme Radio. Someone who's lived in Arkansas. It does not smell.
It does not smell like chicken. I'm sorry. Sorry to break that.
Sorry, or relief for some people. Who knows? But yeah. So of course, fan of Arkansas. Is that for football specifically? All sports on there?
All sports, man. I was hoping they'd bring that national baseball championship home this year, but
yeah, Vanderbilt managed to bring it home this year, man.
Vanderbilt was pretty good.
Yeah, they
good.
had a good program over there. Just fantastic for them. You follow any National Hockey League at all? Any hockey things? You might want to get on the Predators bandwagon now since they're doing pretty good.
Believe it or not, you don't see a lot of hockey in Arkansas, so I don't really know a whole lot about the game, but I know that people here love those Predators.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully you'll be able to go to a Preds game at some
I'm
some
sure
point.
I will.
Just the atmosphere in it is fantastic and such. Maybe you could take all the team for a trip there.
There you go. It's a great idea.
Who knows? Do something like that. You follow any basketball at all?
Razorback.
Yeah, Razorbacks, of course. So Razorbacks. So you're mostly on the college sports side of things.
Yeah, I'm not a huge NBA fan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like watching it towards the playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
I love basketball. I love all sports.
Oh, yeah.
Big proponent of kids playing multiple sports. Anything that they can get their hands on, I think they should be doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Love watching. My wife's a big Patriots fan, so we'll root for the Patriots in the
I'm sorry.
December, January.
It's a matter of I'm sorry because people usually trash on Patriots fan, but at the same time, congratulations, 6-time champions.
Yeah,
I'm on the side of celebrating greatness more so than just being jealous of it.
Agreed.
Oh yeah. You think the NCAA should follow in MTAC's shoes with a 6-team football playoff?
Absolutely.
Yeah, James has been a huge proponent of that as well, and I think that may be the step to go. But how do you feel about them erring more on the side of player safety with that 16 playoff?
We could talk about that for hours, man. I think there's such a long break between the playoff system in college football and the regular season that I think one more week is not that big of a deal for their health, but it's a great argument. That's a great argument.
Maybe what they should do is, because they have obviously all of the bowl games, they have those separations. Just have 4 bowl games. All of them, you're still getting your sponsorship revenue. You're still getting your money from the title games and such. Have the first 2 games, the playoff wild card game per se, and the semifinals, the national semifinal games. Maybe do something like that. That way you can have teams like you can have potential teams like UCF thinks they deserve to be in a playoff game. Yeah. Have them potentially in that 6th seed. But of course now they lost in that game against Texas A&M. I think whichever one they lost to this past year. Whoever it was they lost in the bowl game. Isaiah would definitely know because he's a huge UCF fan. He's one of the proponents they should have been in the college football playoff for going undefeated for 2 years. But whoever it is they lost to, of course. Now they can't necessarily make that argument because they're not undefeated 2 years perfectly in a row. So that'll be really interesting to see if the NCAA actually picks that up. But it is what it is. I think at some point, if they get a 16 playoff, the next thing you know, people are going to be saying, well, why not an 18 playoff? And then try to increase because it's a matter of where the line is.
That's true. That's true.
So it's very interesting. Other than Razorbacks, you follow soccer at all?
No, sir.
Not as much, no, because I know that because Nashville SC is starting to pick up on the rise with going to Major League Soccer and everything. This just gives you more opportunity to potentially see more sports. That potentially with that, not only that, but you're more closer to some SEC games. So Vanderbilt plays Arkansas. You got a potentially front row seat right there.
I'll be there.
That'll be good for it for sure. Let me see here because I think James had some other good provocative questions on this. Let's see here. Switch and everything. So you've been liking your stay in Tennessee, of course, a year and a half.
Yeah,
right?
Nashville's a great place to live, man.
You believe that about 100 to 150 people are moving in a day to Nashville now?
It's crazy.
Yeah, and here around Franklin, it's about 75 to 100 per day too. This place is just a lot more populated than it used to be. It's continually booming.
Yeah,
we've got. Let me see. Most of the questions we've already gone through, which is a good thing, of course. So let's talk a little bit again, going back to the conversion process for 8-man football. So you mentioned that it was just a matter of explaining it to your athletic director and handling some things with that. Were there any specific difficulties with explaining it to the players specifically, or doing any of those transitions?
I think just the perception of, even the players, nobody really had ever heard of 8-man football. So I think that was the hardest thing to explain. Our kids are always, have high goals of going to play at the next level. And they don't want anything to kind of step in that way. So, we made sure to explain to them that, hey, I've had 8 college coaches walk in my door, whether we're 8-man or 11-man, it doesn't matter, and I think it took them, a little bit of time to realize that. I think they went and researched it on their own, But, I mean, you explain to a group of 20 guys that we're going to 8-man football, and they have never heard of 8-man football.
Right.
It's hard for them to grasp right off the bat. But within about a week or two, the more that we talked about it, the more that we explained kind of what it was, the number of MTAC players that have gone on to play at the next level. I mean, they were very receptive. And then I think spring practice and the spring game kind of opened their eyes and say, hey, this is the same game we've been playing for years, And then I've got one kid who's he's a really good player. He wants to play at the next level. Just trying to convince him that, hey, this is not going to be a hindrance. And then when I've got Austin P and some other school, I had about 4 colleges walk in my office within a span of 2 weeks, and he was in there to see that. I think just little things like that open their eyes to say, okay, this is legit. We can do this.
Oh yeah, because that's the big thing, especially not just through our efforts, but through the high skill level, is that giving players the same opportunity to get a college scholarship, whether they're playing in an 11-man school or an 8-man school. That's the big thing, especially, is trying to help them realize that just because you're dropping 3 guys on the field, that doesn't mean you're not going to be looked at as much.
Right.
Because that's the big thing for with what we do, is giving players that medium, that exposure, so that they have the same chance to get those scholarships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, football's football.
Exactly.
I mean, if you can, we would argue, and me and my defense coordinator have talked about this extensively, that if you can play defense in 8-man football, I mean, you can play defense anywhere, because you're covering ground. You've got to really be good at open field tackling, footwork. It's just, there are things about the 8-man game that can actually be really, what's the word for it, attractive to college coaches.
Right. Right. Were there any I'm trying to remember. I think I just lost the question right at the top of my head. But yeah, you're right. Football is football very much. Okay, here's what it was. So with 8-man football, especially, you guys play on a 50 by 100 field now. Are you planning to integrate anything into practices about preparing for the situation of playing on a 40 by 80 field? Because especially with your game coming up in September against Christian Community, they've got a 40 by 80 field. Because that attributes to what you said about if you could cover on defense, you could cover everybody in 8-man football. You can do it in anything, especially if you play 8-man football on a 50 by 100 field. It's a lot more ground to cover for a guy there. But have you started integrating anything into practices about preparing for that 40 by 80 field scenario?
Yeah, so we've played the 80. The length does not really throw a wrinkle in things, in my opinion, all that much. It's the width of the field that's different. So we played our spring game at a 40-yard width, just to allow the kids to get used to it. We plan on keeping just the traditional 53 and a third by 100. But we did. We played a 5-on-5 versus Christian Community at their place at a 40-yard width. So we've had a little bit of practice with it. I think it just really changes kind of your thought process on defense more than anything. Really, from a coaching standpoint, I don't think the kids. We explain it to them, but I don't know if they really care all that much how wide the field is. To them, they're just covering ground, and for us coaches, we have to really think about this pretty hard. What we want to do in the different scenarios. That one's a little different for me to think about the fact that we could go 1 week playing 100 by 53 to the next week playing 80 by 40. We'll see if that, ever becomes a uniform rule in the league, whatever. But, I think the kids won't have any problems getting used to it. We've ran the math on some of the defenses we want to run as opposed to, you're going to have to cover this much yardage in 13 and a half yards doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it can be in the big scheme of things. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be different, but we have planned extensively for how we're going to handle it. So hopefully it works out.
In the matchups you've seen from our film, because I don't know how deep of a dive you've done on our previous broadcasts or film that coaches may have given you, are there any teams you're particularly looking forward to playing the most? Like this team is like, oh yeah, I'm ready to have a matchup against this club.
I mean, obviously Coach Flanders and Christian Community do a great job. We watched the state championship game against them and Webb, and just have the utmost respect for the way that he does things. So I'm looking forward to that game. We want to pride ourselves on being the best that we can possibly be, and we want to play the best. So, we're looking forward to seeing where we are when we face them. We're looking forward to playing Evangel out of Alabama, the national champion out of the Florida tournament. So we're looking forward to just kind of seeing where we match up. But obviously, I've watched quite a bit of film on pretty much everybody on our side of the conference. And, I mean, there's a lot of great schools, a lot of great athletes. It's going to be a load of fun.
Oh, yeah. And you've got 2 games to prepare against Evangel for before you face them on September 6th, and then a total of 5 before you head up to White House to face off against the defending conference champion. So you guys have got a pretty good schedule going forward. I know that with Providence Christian deciding not to go out of football. We talked a little bit about this before the show, of that them dropping out of football. You're still trying to fill that one gap, a game that you guys have up. But what do you see with bye weeks? Because at least looking at your schedule, you've got 3 bye weeks total in the season. The first 2, of course, coming on August 9th and 23rd. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time, because you've got time to potentially view our broadcast to see other teams you may face up against. But you've also got that some coaches have the argument of that a bye week may deteriorate from any momentum that you're starting to build. So how do you – I know you mentioned during off the show that you were trying to get a filler game in there to try and continue it up and such. What's your ideal amount of bye weeks that you would want in the season?
Ideally, it'd be 1. Well, ideally, it would be 2 if we can get that playoff bye week, obviously.
For sure.
I got to give a big shout-out to Coach Flanders, because he helped us out tremendously, allowing us to switch our game from the 23rd of August to the 27th of September, because with Providence dropping out, we were in a situation where we could potentially play 3 games in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just not good for the kids. It's not good for anybody.
No.
So thankfully he was gracious enough to switch that date with us. But our bye weeks, October 11th is our fall break. I think pretty much everybody has that week off.
Yep.
It's the week right before the last week of the season, so it comes at a good time. And then obviously that we play our first game on the 16th of August. The next week is a bye week, so I think it'll be good for us to play that game, kind of evaluate how it went, really teach off of that first learning experience, and then get into the meat of our schedule there. But we're looking to fill that date. It's been really difficult. Obviously, I think just the October 11th would be our ideal bye week. But if we have to have 2, then I'm glad that they're spread apart the way that they are right now.
In case you're looking for a specific team, if you're looking to fill that August 23rd date, the only other school that's got a bye week according to our schedule there is South Haven Christian School. So if you're looking for one school on that day, that's one to play against, because South Haven they had a rough year last year, of course, going 0-8, and that was the year after they won the conference championship for MTAC, beat Christian Community. So that'd be a potential good matchup for you guys in the first few weeks.
Yeah, we've reached out to everybody in the MTAC. They've got some scheduling issues, so it couldn't work on that date. We're talking to a school, and Alabama. I got them mixed up. I think they're out of Alabama to possibly get a game there, but it's just difficult when your bye week or the game that you lose it was just in a really bad spot for us, a really tough one to fill. So
yeah, scheduling is one of the toughest things, especially in this type of level, because of all the factors that go into trying to get a game all together. Just gets really difficult and such. But whether or not you fill it, there'll at least be a decent time for you to, especially after, if for some reason August 23rd doesn't get filled, you at least have the chance to reevaluate after playing your first 8-man game and then determine what do we do going forward into this six game stretch of 6 games within 7 weeks. So that'll be interesting for you guys. But we're really looking forward to seeing how you guys participate. Well, Coach, thank you very much for coming in studio, man. We appreciate your time and coming in, and we're looking forward to that first game you guys have against Riverside Christian on August 16th. It's looking pretty good, man.
We appreciate what y'all do, and just keep giving positive exposure to these kids. I think it's great for everybody involved.
We'll do our best for sure. Thanks again, Coach. That was Dustin McGhee, the head coach for the Ezell-Harding Christian School Eagles. He will be coaching his first 8-man football game in August, hosting Riverside Christian. Well, that's essentially going to do it for today's Extreme Radio show. Nothing else specifically to talk about at the moment. We're trying to get some more guests on in the following weeks. James and Isaiah will be on the show next week, and we'll have more discussion as we continue to lead up to the Jamboree and the start of the 2019 MTAC 8-man football season, or just the 8-man football season in general for Tennessee and Kentucky. So be sure to continue to tune into Extreme Radio. We are planning to have a special guest next week to help us preview the season even more and look at many of the changes that have happened around the league. Of course, get word on that later this week. That's going to wrap up our show for today. Extreme Radio, as always, throughout the 2019 season is presented by GracePointe Healthcare. Go to GracePointeHealthcare.com. Request your appointment online and mention you are with 8-Man Extreme, and you get $20 off your new patient office visit fee. GracePointe Healthcare, modern medicine the old-fashioned way. And all season long, Extreme Radio is sponsored by Dr. Sterling Foster. For all your digestive issues and chiropractic needs, go to drsterlingfoster.com. On behalf of James Shannon and Isaiah Austin, I'm Spencer Thompson. Say so long for this week. We'll see you next week for Extreme Radio.